Sure. Thanks, Sriram, for the wonderful information on blockchain that you've shared. We do have a few questions, and we also understand the fact that you have a hard stop at 6:40, but we'll be very brief, and I'll be asking you a few questions which have been asked by the attendees as well. The first question which has been asked, Sriram, is how do you see applications of blockchain in banking and security markets over the next few years?
Oh, I think alluding to my earlier point, I think there's a lot of use cases that the industry will see in the coming years, and the trend is cross pollination of those use cases. What we see in telecom, we'll see in payments, because they are getting
Yeah.
the applications itself are getting converged, right? So from that perspective, uh, blockchain has a lot to offer. Many more use cases will be pivoted, will be tried, tested in regulatory sandboxes, like I mentioned earlier, in many of the blockchain labs that are funded by private banks, also a few public sector banks, because that takes a lot of investment, right? I mean, a commitment not just of capital, but commitment of resources, commitment of technical resources, commitment of domain SMEs who probably understand a particular trade finance example, right? Supply chain as an example, trade finance as an example. So, so blockchain has a lot of potential in trying to address this problem through a consortium or a platform play. Of course, blockchain cannot do it singularly. There will be other technologies, like I mentioned earlier, around AI, around ML, around IoT, that will actually converge and be built atop this particular technology to solve problems at scale for the BFSI industry.
Right. Great. Thanks for the answer, Sriram. We have another question which is revolving around consortiums, which you spoke about during your presentation. The question is, which are the leading consortiums of blockchain? Does India have any blockchain consortium?
Yep, I think I actually mentioned that in my slide as well. India, there is a consortium, Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, Yes Bank, Mahindra and Mahindra. So there is a consortium. I was involved in one such consortium play. Globally, there are several consortiums. R3 is a famous consortium. There are quite a few other consortiums as well. There are small consortiums which actually try to solve very point solutions, which addresses a very specific narrow subset of use cases. But ideally, that's not the purpose for which a consortium should be built. A consortium should actually be built at scale to solve either one particular problem at scale or multiple problems uh, that actually has a path of progress to scale, right? And that, because
Right.
there's so much investment, right? You spend tens of millions of dollars in setting up these labs, blockchain labs, purely from a technology, hardware, infrastructure, coding perspective, right? So if one has to really measure the ROI or the efficacy of these technologies or these lab constructs, uh, innovation is a great metric to measure, but eventually ROI also has to pay for itself. The technology has to pay for itself, right? So I think
Correct.
in that sense, consortium, in my view, in my humble opinion, consortiums have to be fewer and more deeper and more participative and collaborative.
Sure. Before we move on to the next question, also, if any participants have got any question, they can type it in the chat box, and we'll try to as many as we can, keeping in mind the times that we have. Uh, the next question asked is, why, according to you, blockchain is better over the other technologies for record keeping?
I'm not getting into the comparison of what is better, but what we have is a very
Hmm.
tested and proven technology from a record keeping perspective. Earlier, we have ledgers. I come from an accounting background, so there were times when manual ledgers were casted and posted and reconciled and all of that. Very accurate. You have people who with who've been. If you go to, if you look at some of the public sector banks, probably now there are few of them, but 20 years back when I started my career, and even during my father's time, they were experts. I mean, people have put in 25 years of experience in accounts receivable alone, managing that ledger. That ledger is their baby, right?
Correct.
They come with deep domain expertise in that particular sphere of work. They understand being accurate is very important. They are casting, posting, tallying, reconciling very accurately, and even a CA wouldn't be able to do that. So
Right.
but those were those days, right? But at scale, you need a technology that can be very accurate, can be quite foolproof, can be quite resilient to attacks, cyber attacks, given in an increasingly digital and interconnected world,
Right.
and has sound security policies and practices which are generally accepted, widely accepted, right? Both not just with the regulators, but with other market participants as well. So blockchain pretty much meets all, if not most of those criteria in terms of bringing that immutability of records. Every record is entered as in the network of chain is a block. You delete a particular record, that also forms a block. So people who are part of the network know what has been deleted, what has been added, what are the hashes associated with it. There is a traceability also. There is an auditability, traceability, trackability, immutability, creates a lot of trust and transparency. All of the actions are monitored. There are keys that are generated, logs that are created, and therefore it creates a fair amount or a good amount of confidence and trust within participants. I think, and I am not aware of any other technology that at scale can operate with this amount of trust, immutability, efficiency, and efficacy. So therefore, blockchain for now has been the de facto technology in that respect. Basically, distributed ledger technology.
Right. Right. So great. That's a
There
very
is something
comprehensive.
called hash graph as well. There's something called hash graph, which is a variant of blockchain. But the underlying premise, the underlying technology fabric, the underlying code is a DLT code.
Right. Great. The other question that we have is, do the provisions of Contract Act apply to smart contracts?
Yes, it does. I mean, smart contracts is in some sense different from the regular contract, but in a larger sense, in a philosophical and a contractual sense, in a legal sense, pretty much the same. Unless there are disputes in terms of unilaterally enforcing a particular contract with a particular party. The rules of the Indian Contract Act, I think 1872, if I remember, applies to smart contracts as well. It's very similar to digital signatures, which have actually replaced physical signatures, wet signatures. The extent of the applicability of law for wet signatures is equally applicable for digital signatures. Similarly, contracts are no exception either.
Right. Great. The next question, very interesting one that just come is, could blockchain technology be applied to Islamic banking or Islamic financial products?
There are currently, if you look at countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Middle East,
Yeah.
the Middle East government has adopted blockchain. But the Islamic finance, the Shariat law, yes, there are. I am not so proficient in those use cases. I don't want to pose myself as a pseudo expert there. I am not. But I see that the applicability is increasing in those regions and in those geos.
Great. You also mentioned about sandbox, and there's a question which is revolving around that, which is, what is a regulatory sandbox? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, how do regulatory sandboxes promote innovation?
I think the the fundamental purpose of having a regulatory sandbox is to promote innovation. Otherwise, you
Right.
could do it in the normal environment, normal IT production environment. The reason or the rationale for creating a sandbox, a regulatory sandbox, is to test on new technologies. As I mentioned in fintech, clearly in payments, to a very specific use case, a specific example, there are regulatory sandboxes. Payment providers, you have Paytms of the world, PhonePays of the world, Alipay of the world, Amazon Pay of the world have been testing and piloting a lot of projects on domestic payments, cross-border payments, leveraging real-time technologies, leveraging AI, leveraging vKYC, leveraging eKYC, all of that, right? I mean,
Right.
and Singapore as a country offers a very robust regulatory sandbox. RBI is trying to copy the Singapore model in terms of having regulatory sandbox for its fintech ecosystem participants. The whole premise is to test, to experiment on new ideas, on innovative ideas, because that offers a small representation of the real world. It is not the real world because you can't scale in a sandbox.
Yeah.
The purpose of a
Correct.
sandbox is to test, to simulate the real world environment with probably 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 users, and try to test speed, performance, efficiency, latency, all of that. And then hopefully, given those test results, when it is actually deployed in a production environment for the larger world or for the larger user base, it gets the same level of efficiency, is the same level of performance and efficiency is kind of met when it scales. So regulatory sandbox is a precursor to the actual real world. It kind of simulates the real world when you come to experimenting with new technologies and new applications and new use cases, but it is still
Right.
not the real world. It's a representation of the real world.
Correct. Okay, thanks for that answer, Sri. Next question is, how has blockchain affected the financial markets in terms of raising capital, that is crowdfunding over P2P platforms?
Yeah, P2P lending has been there for quite a while now. Blockchain affecting financial markets, I don't understand that question, because blockchain, if it was Bitcoin, then I would say that there is a parallel to a fiat currency and there's a lot of volatility and speculative trading, and people being extremely whimsical and cyclical, given the flavor of the month, flavor of the day for trading and speculating, right? I don't even want to use the word investing, but more speculating and trading. But blockchain is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is the underlying technology. It has created quite a few use cases in the capital markets, and it will continue to create more and more use cases in the securities and capital markets domain. We see exchanges trying to create a technology architecture around blockchain for its various execution, reporting, and performance purposes. So there's an increased adoption that we will continue to see in the capital markets regime. Being highly regulated, I think there is a sense amongst market participants, and there is a sense amongst practitioners that, sometimes you take 4 steps forward, 3 steps backward, right? I mean, that sense is still there. I don't want to deny that, but net effect is that you're actually moving forward and not backward.
Right. Another question which has come on the investment advice side, does blockchain perform any role in investment advice, and specifically on robo-advisory?
No, blockchain is different, robo-advisory is different. Robo-advisory is pretty much built on the premise of AI, ML, and neural networks, recommendations, right? When we go and when we shop in Amazon, when you shop for a particular book or for a particular gadget or for a particular device or for a particular commodity, you see shoppers also saw this, shoppers also bought this, we will recommend this to you. That's basically an algorithm actually churning out the math behind the scenes and presenting to you some options given your user behavior, given your buyer behavior. Robo-advisory is pretty much that, understanding algorithms being coded in a fashion by leveraging deep neural convolutional networks to understand investor behavior, right? And position products, position offerings accordingly, right? If somebody is a high net worth investor and who's already quite entrenched or invested in equities, would it make sense for us to position a debt product? Can our robo-advisory engine promote a debt product or a hybrid product? That is robo-advisory, wherein the robo-advisory disintermediates or blocks the friction between your erstwhile relationship manager and the client. The robo-advisory is in between your relationship manager and the client, right? Because it's the first point of interface. Whereas blockchain is completely conceptually very different from a robo-advisor.
Right, right. There's another question which is in line to cybersecurity. How are cybersecurity issues dealt in a distributed ledger framework, or how does blockchain technology address the cybersecurity issues?
I think fairly, given the hashing technology, given the private key, public key hashing technology, I think cybersecurity concerns are by and large addressed. That is not to say that these technologies are not penetrable. These technologies are penetrable. You could hack into an experienced hacker can actually penetrate into the system even after adequate penetration testing has been done. We have heard, it is in public domain, that some of those systems have been hacked, and the only reason for hacking and the only reason for exposing that vulnerability is for hackers to prove a point that no system is foolproof in this world. No amount
Right,
of technology is non-penetrable, and it's more a message to the larger technology players, to the larger ethical hackers, that so there's also a counter surveillance happening, right? You have a lot of ethical hackers actually building those necessary firewalls, building those necessary security postures within the corporate IT architecture to counter these cyber attacks or preempt or alert these cyber attacks should they occur, given a certain pattern recognition algorithm, right? And given some suspicious activity, right? We call it in AML parlance suspicious activity monitoring. For the benefit of the audience, they can relate to that word. So it's similarly in technology parlance, suspicious activity and suspicious activity monitoring is done at the back end through algorithms, right? Through crawlers and all of that. So that actually kind of alerts a certain set of behavior, certain set of anomalies for timely intervention. But
great.
it's not foolproof. No system is foolproof.
Right, right. The other question is, we've been hearing a lot about these terms and terminologies in financial services and technology side, which is, blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and fintech. So how do you differentiate between, all these terms? How do you differentiate between blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and fintech?
1 hour session on everything should should help clarify the air. AI 1 hour, ML 1 hour, blockchain 1 hour. We've done with blockchain. So I think these are all conceptually very different
Correct.
and requires a separate discussion. But let me assure you that all of these are not blockchain. Blockchain is different, like what I explained. I hope the audience
Yeah.
got a sense of what blockchain actually is. AI, machine learning, neural networks, virtual reality, all of that are very different concepts, but increasingly finding its way through business applications, business use cases, solving point solutions, solving problems at scale. We're increasingly seeing all of that converge and being applied.
Right. The other question that we have is, what websites, magazines, or journals should the participants refer to learn more about blockchain? I mean, one way I can probably answer that is the refresher course that you can take after the session would probably help you with some kind of a knowledge. But definitely, Sriram, what do you think? Some other reading
I think just
material?
Google on some of these consortiums, Hyperledger and R3 consortiums. Look at those blockchain labs. That some of the information is some of the information that is publicly available. I mean, if it again depends on the audience.
Right.
Somebody wants to understand technically, right? I mean, I would first recommend Satoshi's white paper, which is still there in SSR and other research websites. It's widely,
Right.
it's a couple of pages of PDF file, but it doesn't stop there. You may want to really look at IBM blockchain consortium, right? There are a lot of technical papers, research papers, because people who were earlier involved in distributed databases, right, are actively involved in blockchain because for them, they find this as a new avatar of distributed database, right? So, and
Right.
distributed database has been there for 40, 45, 50 years. Right?
Correct.
Similarly, people who have been in the trust protocol, right? They look at this as an extension of that. So when you look at the fundamentals of this technology, it is still old school. People who have done research in those specific areas for the last 2, 3, 4 decades have written papers bringing in the flavor of blockchain, bringing in the application or the convergence of these technologies in a distributed ledger technology kind of, so to say the word, right? So
Right.
those papers are should be quite enriching for the technical folks. For the business folks, I think Google is the best go-to source, because Google will lead you to several of those blockchain consortium related pages. And I think a business user, a compliance user, a regulatory user will need to understand the uses, the applications, the trends, the way forward, the regulatory regime over it. I don't think they need to understand the technical piece of it, because it doesn't make sense for them, right?
Correct. Correct. And just to add to that, as we had mentioned at the beginning of the session, there's an e-learning on blockchain that is available for all the interested participants who can reach out to us after the session is over. But we definitely, Sriram, want to keep in mind the time, and we know for a fact that you have a hard stop in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So we will not keep you waiting for too long. I would like to thank you first for agreeing to do this session today. We had the panel, the participants, and I'm sure they would have gained a lot of knowledge from today's session. At least they would have known the basics of blockchain and what exactly it covers. At the same time, I would also like to thank the National Institute of Security Markets, NISM, Dr. Narasimhan, and the entire team for co-partnering this webinar today, along with CISI. And lastly, we would want to thank all the participants, most importantly, who joined us for today's session. We hope you enjoyed the session. If you have further questions, you can reach out to the point of contacts, and we'll try to get those answers as well. With that, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from everyone very, very soon. Thank you.